afternoon. So a hot Friday evening. Again, overnight, we'll see that mist and low cloud just drifting a bit further inland across eastern Scotland, northeast England. So it won't be as hot here on Friday or on Saturday, where that low cloud could persist. But generally, it's another hot and sunny day on Saturday. Still a bit more cloud in the far north with a little bit of light rain and drizzle. But otherwise, we'll be watching those numbers on the up once more. And again, across parts of the south, southwest Midlands into Wiltshire, down towards Dorset there, 34, 35, possibly 36 Celsius, and maybe something similar in the capital. So it's a hot weekend. The sunshine will continue for most on Sunday, but a change as this low pressure drifts northwards. We will see more cloud on Sunday. Could bring some showers next week.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along on tonight's Mark Steyn Show. I appreciate that after 2.5 years of rule by the expert class, nothing works. The NHS might as well have a DNR sign hanging on its headquarters. Archaic expressions unused in generations are now back from the grave. Cost of living, interest rates, stagflation, and they're combining with exciting new problems like massive amounts of what statisticians call excess mortality. In layman's terms, that's a huge pile of corpses. But even so, I was still naive enough to expect a G7 nation and permanent member of the UN Security Council to at least have running water. Not so fast, says the utilities branch of our expert class, which is now recommending we give up showers. Leilani Dowding is here on that. Should we give up on the awful shower running this joint? No, Liz Truss is here to save the nation. Sam Ashworth-Hayes and Lois Perry will mull that one. And Toby Young is here to lift his eyes to heaven and beseech the Almighty. How long, O Lord, how long? Plus, the most vital part of the show, all the more important when we live in the constant swirl of a blizzard of lies, your comments and questions. Give it your best. Be as personally vicious about me as you wish, and indeed about Toby Young. He can certainly take it, but do send your comments along by email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can Twitter me at gbnews. But first, as ever, the latest headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Energy companies have agreed to do more to help struggling families after the Prime Minister urged them to act in the national interest. The talks follow a dire warning, with one consultancy firm forecasting that the cap on energy bills could reach £5,000 next year. Despite the plea from Boris Johnson, there's been no official announcements of any immediate help. The Chancellor says the government will continue to evaluate the extraordinary profits being made in certain parts of the sector and consider what steps to take. 20 Albanian criminals have been deported back to their home country. Some of those on the removal flight today, chartered by the Home Office, have been convicted of drug and weapons offences. It brings the total number of Albanian criminals removed from the UK in the past year to 1,000, including some who crossed the English Channel illegally. Home Secretary Priti Patel says the government will stop at nothing to remove those with no right to be here. A man who was allegedly part of the IS terror cell known as the Beatles has been remanded in custody. Ain Davis was arrested at Luton Airport after being deported from Turkey, where he was serving a prison sentence. The 38-year-old from West London appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court, charged with terrorism offences. He'll now appear at the Old Bailey next month. A 39-year-old man has been charged following incidents in Skye and Wester Ross, which left one man dead and 3 people injured. John McKinnon was killed as a gunman targeted a number of properties in the area. His family released a statement describing him as a loving husband and father of 6. The suspect is due to appear at Inverness Sheriff Court on Friday. The number of Ukrainian families that are now homeless or at risk of becoming so after arriving in England has doubled in the last 2 months. Officials believe more than 1,300 Ukrainian households are affected after arriving under the Family and Homes for Ukraine schemes. Hundreds of placements have fallen through due to relationships with sponsors breaking down or accommodation being judged to be unsuitable or unavailable. There are fears that more families could be affected as their initial 6-month placements end. And water industry insiders say they expect an official drought to be declared tomorrow. An amber heat warning is currently in place, and the risk of wildfires is exceptional across parts of England and Wales. The Met Office has raised its fire severity index to its highest level following the prolonged dry conditions. Temperatures on Saturday set to hit 36 degrees. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Ray. What was that figure predicted for your energy bill next year? £5,000 just yesterday. It was only £4,400. It's gone up 600 quid in 24 hours. That's fantastic. What's your betting for the weekend? It'll be up to £7,300, something like that. You all know Klaus Schwab, head honcho of the World Economic Forum at Davos, and the twin brother of Ming the Merciless. Here he is with his brother. That's Ming on the left and Klaus on the right. Anyway, Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum has some good news. There's nothing healthier for you than a cold shower. Yeah, I'm sorry if you're listening to us on GB News Radio, but when Klaus completes his takeover of the world, that is the only music you're going to be able to hear. It'll be pumped into your dwelling pod 24/7. But that's great news, isn't it? People who have cold showers take 29% fewer sick days. So that water heater that costs a fortune, just throw it out or use it as a novelty end table in your living room. You can't afford to heat water, and like the World Economic Forum says, you don't need to. Oh, wait a minute. The health experts say a cold shower can give you a heart attack. From the Daily Express, the shower habit, that's a cold shower, the shower habit that could precipitate a heart attack in the healthy. So this 20% excess mortality we presently have in the UK, 1,000 extra people dying than should be dying in England and Wales alone, tons of extra corpses, people keeling over, myocarditis rampant, massive outbreak of the new leading cause of death, unknown cause. There's a lot of unknown cause going about. Don't go thinking that any of that has anything to do with any words beginning with vax and ending in een. It's just this sudden enthusiasm for cold showers that is bringing on tons of heart attacks. Gee, I hope that wasn't Klaus Schwab's plan all along.
Let's also be clear. The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
The future is built by us. Klaus Schwab actually speaks with a black country accent off camera. He just puts that thing on when he's doing his Teutonic megalomaniac routine. So which is it? Cold showers cause you to take 29% fewer days off work, or cold showers cause you to drop randomly dead from SAD, sudden adult death syndrome? Well, the correct answer is neither of the above, because you shouldn't be taking any showers. From the Daily Mail, a shower, it's better, I'll try and read this with a straight face. A shower, it's better to freshen up with a damp towel, say water bosses. They're not joking. Quote, Thames Water suggests people should wipe themselves down with a cloth instead of taking a shower. We're very responsible here at GB News. We've all been wiping ourselves down with a cloth for 2 or 3 weeks now. It's Colin Brazier's cloth, but he's pretty decent about sharing it. It got a little ripe in the lift by the 4th or 5th day, but you soon get used to it. Headline from The Guardian. Quote, this is the future. The Oxfordshire village living without running water, unquote. That would be North End on the Buckinghamshire border. Very desirable. Average price for a detached home, £750,000. That's completely detached, at least from the water supply. Thames Water, the chaps who want you to use a moist cloth instead of a bath or shower, has a corporate history going back to the brilliant and far-sighted construction of the new river from Hertfordshire to Stoke Newington to bring fresh drinking water to London. It opened in 1613 because 400 years ago we could do things like that. We can't do them now. The last new UK reservoir opened in 1991, since when the population has increased by 17%, or 10 million people. You know how it is when you're in some hotel having a nice long full-strength shower, and then the asylum seeker in the room next door steps into his bathroom and suddenly your water pressure drops by half and you're just standing under a tiny drip trying to get it onto the center of your head? Yeah, it's almost as if having open borders on a small island with a population density thrice as high as France eventually places strains on basic infrastructure. Who'd have thought it? Speaking of which, Thames Water is responsible not just for fresh water out of your taps, but wastewater too. So what's going on in the sewers? We reported a few weeks ago that traces of the polio virus had been found in the London sewers. Just a couple of spots, though, in North and East London. Well, Thames Water can't get drinking water to Oxfordshire villages, but they certainly know how to swish around the polio. It's now strongly present in the sewage systems of a quarter of London boroughs, with weaker doses showing up elsewhere. So in total, it's around a third of all London boroughs now have polio in the sewer system. So 4 decades after the United Kingdom supposedly eradicated polio, it's back. From the UK Health Security Agency, quote, all children aged 1 to 9 in London to be offered a dose of polio vaccine. How about that? It's believed to derive from someone who had the oral polio vaccine, no longer used in the UK, in part because it does enable this kind of spread. But your own national health protocols don't really matter when you have open borders, do they? The head of Thames Water is a lady called Sarah Bentley. She is handsomely remunerated. Look at that. Thames Water boss Sarah Bentley on £2 million a year, combined salary and bonus. So for about 4 months' pay, she could afford a pretty swank pad in that Oxfordshire village, except it's got no running water, so who the hell wants to live there? But never mind the management team. Who owns Thames Water? It sounds like a public utility, doesn't it? But it's not government-owned, or at any rate not UK government-owned. Just shy of 10% of Thames Water is owned by the government of China. Try that at home, boys and girls. Buy 10% of Coca-Cola and you'll find the management of Coca-Cola are very attentive to your needs. Something is badly wrong with very basic aspects of UK daily life. Let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Leilani Dowding joins me from Europe. Once she heard we were all following Thames Water's advice and showering with slightly moistened cloths, she wanted to put some clear blue water between herself and the malodorous GB News presenter. So she's on the continent. Great to see you, Leilani. What do you make of the water crisis afflicting the UK?
Well, it's great to be here. I'm in Spain. I'm missing that extreme English weather for some hotter, extremer Spanish weather. It's insane, isn't it? So what's going on and the reports. Now, you know, they want to impose this hosepipe ban, but like you said, there's been no reservoirs built since 1991. 10 million population increase. Also, 3 billion litres of water leak per day. So we're losing that. And all these utility companies have been selling off reservoirs for developers to build houses on and what have you. So, you know, what do they expect when we don't have the infrastructure? And it's these public companies putting shareholders and their CEOs and everyone first except for the consumer. So here we are, a hosepipe ban. And it's just more to, you know, worry people and get them, like, you know, scared about climate change and extreme heat and you know, 30-degree weather, which when I was younger just used to be called summer.
Well, that's the point. Amazingly, when you're in Spain, where you are, Leilani, or when you're in Greece, or when you're in other parts of the Mediterranean, you have higher temperatures, and the British people so love those higher temperatures that they get on terrible airlines and fly to those places so they can enjoy those temperatures. But uniquely, whenever those temperatures start inching upwards in the British Isles themselves, then apparently it's a disaster, it's going to kill you, it's a public health emergency. They do always find a way, as you said, to blame. They're going to blame it now on climate change, global warming, and in fact it's just gross mismanagement of an essential requirement for daily existence.
And it's typical Britain, isn't it? It's when it's hot, the trains can't run. I've got a weather warning on my weather app on my phone about extreme weather. I'm in Spain. The pool is full of water. There's irrigation systems all around, you know, to the plants and the trees and everything else. They're not worried about some water. And you know, when it's cold, if it was raining, it would be climate change as well. You know, when it's cold, the trains can't run, or there's leaves on the tree, or there's leaves on the tracks in autumn. There's always a problem in Britain when anything just goes slightly away from what's considered normal, you know. So, you know, it's no surprise, and it's just more fear-mongering. And, you know, I've gone on about this climate change net zero quite a lot, and I don't want anyone to think, you know, I don't care about the environment. I'm hugely passionate about the environment and trees and nature. But when you hear things like 14 million trees in Scotland, which absorb the carbon dioxide, are being cut down wind turbines, you got to think, how green is this green agenda that they have. And to be quite honest, I think this whole net zero agenda that they have actually goes against nature.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I mean, when we all switch to electric cars with batteries, all those batteries are going to have to be buried somewhere. They'll probably bury them somewhere out of sight so we can hit net zero. So it'll probably be like the Rwandan policy where we reach a deal to bury all the batteries somewhere in some unfortunate member of the Commonwealth who needs the dough. But it will absolutely be poisoning the ground in order to make ourselves feel good about how green we are. And you're right in that the climate change people win. I'll do this in Fahrenheit because I'm too old to learn what centigrade is. But basically, if it's 87 degrees and you're boiling, that's climate change. If it's 10 degrees below freezing, that's climate change. And if it's like 54 and partly cloudy, that means that climate change is roaring out of control and we're all going to die. I mean, basically, people are so invested in this myth now that it's preventing sensible decisions on public policy, like letting in 10 million people and then figuring out how we're going to provide water for 10 million extra people.
Well, I guarantee this. We're going to see it in the winter when there's rain, right? And they're building all these houses on floodplains, and then it's going to rain, and they're going to say, "Oh, all these houses flooded." Well, you're building on floodplains, but they're going to say it's climate change and it's brought the extra rain. But the reality is, and mark my words, it will happen. They will blame climate change when they're building on floodplains.
Yeah. You're right. And this is actually one of the, it's not as densely populated as Belgium, but it's one of the most densely populated countries. And when people think about what they love about the UK, I don't think they want it just to be carpeted with low-income housing because we've got the southern border open to every Albanian gangster who wants to come and have the run of the joint, do they?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, all of these things, they all go hand in hand. It's all related. And hopefully whoever gets in next is going to address all of these.
Well done, Leilani. We're going to be talking about that in a moment, whether next month's Prime Minister is going to be able to solve all these problems before the October energy bills. Enjoy. So how long are you in Spain for then?
For one more week, just one more week. Just, extreme dangerous temperatures. I'm lapping them up, getting my vitamin D, getting a tan, and if I get hot, I'll move in the shade. I don't need, my iPhone app telling me what I should do in extreme heat.
Don't try that at home, boys and girls. Leilani's being completely irresponsible there. We'll get Ofcom complaints. It's dangerous to leave the house. Stay indoors and cool off with the lack of water coming out of your taps. Thank you very much, Leilani Dowding. Coming up, your comments, plus what's even more malodorous than half a dozen GB News presenters using the same moistened cloth for a week? The idiotic stench of the racket that, as Leilani was just talking about, that is net zero. Sam Ashworth-Hayes and Lois Perry are going to be talking about next month's Prime Minister and whether she's serious about maybe dialing back the net zero stuff. Stick around, we're coming right back.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let's hear what the people have to say. We wanted to know whether you're scared the United Kingdom might run out of water. It might have happened by the end of the show, actually. Norman says, no, we are surrounded by billions of gallons of water. That would be the North Sea and the Irish Sea and such. All we need to do is desalinate it. The government, instead of sending millions to France who do nothing about the migrants, could invest in desalination plants. That's probably true that the French are using the money we're sending them and building desalination plants on your sixpence, Norman. But that we should combine them, because if we built enough desalination plants along the southern shore, it would make it much harder for these dinghies to land, and they'd all have to go back to France. Robert says we've run out of money, so we have run out of money. Basically, we've spent all the money the United Kingdom is going to have till next century, so it doesn't really matter at this stage. It's like fantasy football. So losing our water is just another cross to bear. Jambo says Loch Ness has more fresh water than the rest of the UK combined. I think we are good. So all we need is a long pipeline from Loch Ness down to London. It's like that new river I was talking about that opened in 1613, 400 years ago. It would take 400 years to get a pipeline from Loch Ness down to the populated parts of the country through the planning process. Kay says, when they shut the foreign car wash down, do they have separate car washes for foreign cars now? Has identity politics come to cars, so that if you have a Japanese car, you take it to a different place than if you've got some. Well, I guess they're all foreign cars. Oh, so you want this? I get what you're saying here now. If we, instead of spending the water on all these foreign cars, we should just be watering our gardens instead. I didn't know we would think. That's interesting, Kay, that you think of it as a foreign car wash. But you're right. Why are they so eager to keep all these German and American and Japanese cars so clean when we can't? We have to shower with a moist cloth. And something called My Alter Ego says you could also discuss why we treat surface rainwater as waste and send it out to sea. Well, you know, in places that have a little bit of a shortage, in fact, in British colonies, so they're Her Majesty's sovereign territory, like Bermuda, people have rain barrels to collect the rainwater and use it as well. In rural parts of the United States and Canada, when you build your house, you just drill a hole and find some water from the water table, and it's the problem here has been leaving it to these local water monopolies now controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. That's sure to end happily. Liz Truss was generally agreed to have emerged from her encounter with Alistair Stewart and the GB News audience reasonably well. She seems to be doing a marginally more passable impression of a regular human being than Rishi Rich manages to do. That's setting the bar a little low, but she appears to have well and truly trussed and stuffed the Sunak goose. Lois Perry from Car26, you can find out all about that at car26.org, is here, as is Sam Ashworth-Hayes from The Spectator. He doesn't care for Liz Truss doing her soaring oratory.
I want to see us eating more British food here in Britain. At the moment, we import 2/3 of all of our apples. We import 9/10 of all of our pears. We import 2/3 of our cheese. That is a disgrace.
Yeah, I love that hand movement. That is a disgrace. It's rather charming in its wooden. It's authentically wooden. I like that. Sam was also unsettled by this photograph of Liz looking cosy with Michael Gove. Why is he leaning into her like that? I hope that book title is not Mr. Gove Working Blue, as the comedians say. You know, when I was a young teenager, there was a boy and a girl who were the two people in the county you least wanted to see making out with each other, and they used to insist on going at it on the back seat for the entire length of long rural bus rides and train journeys. And I haven't thought about that in many decades until I saw that picture of Michael Gove putting the moves on next month's Prime Minister. Well, Sam, you back when you drew attention to that little clip of Liz Truss talking about how 2/3 of our cheese being imported is a disgrace. There were 7 candidates or something in, and you basically placed her at the bottom of the. You didn't like any of them, but you particularly didn't.
Rishi was the bottom. Rishi was at the bottom.
No, Rishi was at the bottom.
Rishi was the bottom, and then it was Mordaunt, and then a few others. Truss was actually towards the upper half. It's my disagreements with Truss were mostly aesthetic rather than policy based.
So you're because I take it the cheese speech. She'll be getting better writers and working on the delivery. So you're actually quite happy about the prospect of a Truss premiership?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way her policy team are putting this together and the way that the direction she's taking, she's sort of going for a low tax, higher growth Britain, whereas Rishi Sunak's policy prescription seems to be there's too much money outside the Treasury, we need to get it back.
Yeah, I don't even know where he got that idea, because apart from Rishi Sunak's immediate circle of friends, everybody else is like broke and I'm wondering how to pay the next electric bill. Liz Truss with Alison Stewart yesterday, though, did make some encouraging remarks on things like fracking, Lois.
She did, and we did our polling last week, which showed that 70% of the Tory voters actually wanted net zero to be basically got rid of, or at the very least paused and looked at again. So did she take notice of what we said? I hope so. I mean, it ran in the Telegraph. She wants to frack, she wants energy security, nuclear, and she wants to exploit all of our resources in the North Sea. That's great, isn't it?
Let's just hear her actually saying that, in case anyone doubts it. Here is Liz Truss with Alison Stewart yesterday.
We can change things with the oil and gas industry. So, for example, I support fracking in areas where there is local support for it. I support extracting more gas from the North Sea. I support moving ahead faster with nuclear power. So we are energy independent, because one of the problems we're facing is Vladimir Putin is using the fact that Europe is dependent on Russian gas to try and leverage that against Europe, and we can't allow that to happen.
Now, her point there is that if you don't have energy independence, you don't really have independence, Sam, because you've got Putin basically can turn your lights off as he can with Germany.
Well, and it's sort of been interesting to see how this evolves, because right now the UK has very little reliance on Russia at all for gas. We were importing about 4% of our supply last year, and now it's 0. But because we are still in this European gas market, we are still importing from Norway, and liquid natural gas comes here and we export it through pipelines to the continent. once it's sort of been transformed appropriately, we basically are completely exposed to the price variation there. Now, most of the time, this is quite good for us because it means that if we have a disruption to domestic supply, we can pick up the slack from overseas. It works out. It makes things smoother. But it does mean that when you have a correlated shock, so something that affects all of Europe in one go, we're sort of really exposed to that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure whether that's going to be true in the coming months, because Norway is already talking about, you know, if your supply starts to dry up, they're going to serve all these countries that are exporters are going to serve their domestic markets first, and you know, the UK is going to be very low on the list of priorities.
And why shouldn't they? You know, we should all have complete autonomy over our own energy situation. There's £2 trillion worth of gas, shale gas there right now. That's £100,000 for every man, woman and child's worth of gas under our feet. It can actually be got going within 12 to 18 months. I mean, my understanding is that Liz Truss thought it would take a lot longer, but now she knows that it can be moved on very, very, very quickly indeed. We shouldn't be reliant on anybody. We don't need to be. We don't need renewables, windmills, all these other stupid, heavily subsidised things. We've got it all. We've got it all under our feet. We've got enough for 150 years at least.
Yeah, but it's beyond that, isn't it? Because you know, the downside, if she was to say net zero, we're done with it. I think it's meant to kick in whatever it is, 2035 or whatever. If she was to just say, well, look, people are hurting, people are freezing this winter, people have got no water, we're not playing around with that stuff anymore. Everyone at the G7 would be down on her. At her first G7 meeting, Macron and Biden and Justin and all the rest of the gang would be clobbering her on that.
But that's why she needs to stand firm. You know, she needs to be very, 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 very strong. Rishi Sunak loves all this stuff. He loves it. Tony Blair wants him to be Prime Minister. That should say something.
Well, Sam likes it too. You think
he believes in CO2 being the pollutant,
you think being worried about sea levels in the Maldives in the 22nd century is part of what it is to be a conservative?
It's not so much I'm worried about, well, I am worried about sea levels in the Maldives to some degree, but I'm far more concerned about sea levels here. We're currently set to lose 200,000 homes to sea level rise in the next...
That's nonsense. Prove that with documentation, because I've been told by multiple scientists that's nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
But I'm sure there are plenty of scientists who would say that it's true.
Yeah, OK. Well, then there's a debate about it then, isn't there? But no, that's absolutely wrong. I'm sorry. That's completely wrong. And you actually believe that CO2 causes problems with...
No, just you're saying that 200,000... waterfront properties on the shorelines of the British Isles are at risk of disappearing from climate change.
Yeah, so this was, I think it was 150 to 200,000 from the top of my head. But if you look at this report, which I'll happily send around post-game, it's a mixture of erosion of coastal territories. You have cliffs which crumble.
You know that erosion happens naturally, don't you? That there's always been erosion, and it's nothing to do with somebody having a 4x4 or whatever, or using their hairdryer too much. You know, it's absolutely nothing to do with that. Climate changes naturally. We talked about this before. You really do need to do some more research.
Well, erosion, it's true that erosion does occur naturally, but I don't really, you know, I mean, the coastline of southern England is going to become uninhabitable from all these quote-unquote asylum seekers long before it becomes uninhabitable because of climate change.
So, I mean, just a...
And actually, just on the point of the Maldives, if the sea does rise up and swamp the Maldives, a nice place in the Commonwealth, sunny Muslims, agreeable chaps, didn't agree with their revolution in 1968, but that's their right. But all those sunny Muslims, by the time it does overwhelm the Maldives, are going to be living in Folkestone anyway.
They've just built a new airport there. They're building loads of resorts all on the coastline in the Maldives. If you seriously thought that there was a problem there, would you be giving permission for new airports and things to be built, and for new homes to be being built on the coastline? You know, all these people that come up with all these mad theories about climate change and everything all have properties that are actually on the coastline all over the world. All of them, including Al Gore, who wrote that ridiculous book.
And Barack Obama at Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
I think it would be a tremendous mistake to extrapolate from the fact that people are still planning as if the country is going to go on in some sort of shape or form, that they therefore don't believe there's a serious risk of rising sea levels damaging it in the future. I think as an extrapolation, it doesn't really work out.
Well, OK, let me be more cynical about it in political terms, because you were writing about climate change as a conservative thing. But isn't the reality? Boris was hot for net zero. I don't know whether it was just because of he was particularly hot for Carrie at that moment and he decided to sign on to it.
Boris is hot for everyone.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that's true. He's got global warming in his trousers. That's a big part of the problem. But the point here is that it doesn't work for him. That, there's not room in a way for two eco-zealot parties, or actually in the Westminster system, because you got all the Celtic eco-zealots in, I don't even know why Sinn Féin are all hot for the climate change too, but basically there's no political space for the Tories in this.
I think that's a misunderstanding in that there's a significant degree of public support for these sort of eco measures.
No, there isn't.
So if you go around and we can disagree.
Well, just done polling recently, so 52% want net zero scrapped, and that's across everybody. Not
very much depends on the question you ask.
Well, I can show you the question. You're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, finish your thought.
Let's say under the assumption that there is public support for it, then you will find parties converging on it simply because it's not sensible to differentiate yourself on this. Now, it may be that perhaps there is a lack of public support and we will find parties veering away, but right now that seems to be a convergence towards this as something that people generally agree on. There is space to differentiate yourself on other things. So, for instance, on the package of support you're going to offer to households to get them through this winter, on energy policy, on economic growth, on taxes.
Well, it's not enough, though, is it? I mean, what's interesting for me about Liz Truss yesterday, on all kinds of things, on, grooming gangs, is she seemed to be anxious to differentiate the Tories from Labour, Lib Dems and, the SNP and Sinn Féin and Plaid Cymru. I mean, even the secessionist parties basically just want to leave the UK to set up a country exactly like the one they're left. They're leaving. They all agree on everything.
No, I know. Well, she's an extremely clever girl, Liz Truss, and that's why she's going to be the next Prime Minister. I think she's great. I really do.
OK, and she's going to be Prime Minister on September the 5th. Is she going to last, or is this going to be like whatever it is, the fourth failed Tory Prime Ministership in a row?
So this is a really good question, because there are things, I mean, look, if you said right now, how will Truss do in the next election, it's not favourable territory. We're going to have a very rough winter this year. We expect, if you look at IMF forecasts, other forecasts, energy prices are going to remain high next year and possibly into 2024. Which is not, and we're probably going to have a recession this year as well. That's not good territory for the PM. But, if you look at what she's saying and what she's doing, she's the candidate out there with the best chance of finding short-term policy wins to boost growth, boost the economy, sort of boost quality of living. And if she can do that, and there's a reasonable chance she can, if she's smart about it, then she has a good chance.
No, that's a point of agreement. They didn't agree on sea levels in the Maldives, but they do agree that she's got a sporting chance of making a go of it. And none of us will remember the names of Theresa Cameron and Boris Major and all these other floppo PMs we've had lately. Thank you, Sam and Lois. Good to see you both. Stump the Steyn is looming. GB Views at gbnews.uk. And Toby Young is with us. We're not talking about grubby politics. We're casting our eyes to heaven and contemplating the divine. That's coming up next on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Today's Britain is a pretty post-Christian country with a pretty post-Christian Church of England. The Archbishop of Canterbury would rather talk about anything other than Father, Son and Holy Ghost, but people incline toward faith in something. So in what Matthew Arnold called the melancholy, long withdrawing roar of the sea of faith, a new tide pours in. White privilege is now our original sin. Decolonizing our institutions is the contemporary version of Catholic self-flagellation. To be cancelled is to be cast out for heresy. Toby Young is the founder of the Free Speech Union and the Daily Skeptic, and he's been talking about this new religion. We had a little bit of a touch of it in the previous segment, Toby, because people's investment in the whole climate change issue seems to be more than just as public policy. There is something millenarian about all that, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Clearly, people are very taken with the climate change agenda because it gives them a sense of moral purpose, meaning, something transcendent, some reason for for them to be here. They're going to save the world, save humanity from its sinfulness. But I think it also manifested itself during COVID. There was a very ritualized dimension to the whole pandemic era. The wearing of masks, the clapping for the NHS here. People seem to be yearning to participate in these public rituals, which were expressions of social solidarity and gave their lives a kind of meaning and purpose that they don't otherwise have. But I think it's most clearly visible in the woke cult. That really does seem to be filling a God-shaped hole. And it seems to have, the rise of the woke cult seems to have coincided with the decline of Christianity as church-going declines quite dramatically, particularly across the Anglosphere. So the woke cult has filled that God-shaped hole left by the ebbing away of the Christian tide. And you can see this in all sorts of areas. I mean, there are lots of ritualized aspects to, being part of the woke cult, whether it's, taking the knee, engaging in racial self-flagellation, which has something in common with some of the more dramatic Christian sects like Opus Dei. But the point I made in a recent interview with the Christian Institute is that wokery seems to have taken on many aspects of Christianity, but some of the worst aspects and left behind some of the better aspects. So one of the attractive things about Christianity is this distinction between the sin and the sinner. You can condemn the sin, but forgive the sinner. You don't think that someone is beyond the pale because they've sinned. There is a path back. There capable of doing penance and being redeemed. Whereas in the woke church, there doesn't seem to be that same willingness to forgive, that distinction between the sin and the sinner. If you are guilty of homophobia or transphobia or misogyny, then you are beyond the pale. There's no path back for you. There's no penance you can do that would compensate for your sinfulness. You just need to be cast out permanently, cancelled, as we call it. And it struck me that maybe the woke, if they want their cult to endure, they need to think about, if they're going to replace Christianity, taking on some of the more attractive aspects of Christianity and not just embracing the least attractive aspects of it.
Well, no, it's the complete opposite, as you know from personal experience. When you yourself were subject to this cancel culture a couple of years back, it's not just that there's no possibility of redemption, it's that ancient sins that you would have already have been forgiven for are dredged up and are a permanent blot on you. In your case, I think they found something you'd said in 1987 or 1985 or whatever it was, and used it against you. And there's something actually cruel, isn't there, about a secular faith that has, as you put it, no path back?
Yes, I think it is quite cruel. And those who find themselves targeted by an outrage mob, it's no defense to say, well, I said that, 34 years ago. And I've changed my mind since. And in any event, I was, very young, and, shouldn't some latitude be extended to foolishness when people are very young? But actually, no, that there's no humanity. There's no understanding. If you've sinned, even if you sinned as a teenager, and we've seen this with the cancellation of some major sports figures, if they've said something on Twitter aged 14, that is unacceptable by today's standards, then it's fine to cancel them, to deprive them of their livelihood, to just cast them out. And that does seem very brutal and inhuman and reminiscent of other waves of kind of puritanical intolerance that have swept through different cultures, whether it was, the Soviet Union or China during the Cultural Revolution or America during the McCarthyite period. There seems to be a temptation. Humans are often kind of tempted into thinking in this very intolerant, cruel way about their fellow human beings. And, you need to resist that. And you see those kind of totalitarian, authoritarian, intolerant impulses in the woke cult. It's there in climate change. It was there in the kind of draconian way in which lockdown measures were enforced. It's there in the intolerance of anyone who expresses any skepticism about the vaccine. But it's really there in spades in the woke cult.
But just to go back to what you were saying about COVID, that you're right, people enjoyed those rituals of banging your saucepans for the NHS, even though the NHS isn't worth banging it. God is worth banging a saucepan for, rather more than the NHS, which is now the world's most lavishly funded Zoom call, and you can't actually see any doctors or nurses, and people have all died of it. Doesn't the fact that people, whether it's climate change, whether it's the COVID community aspect, whether it's wokery, doesn't all that suggest that in the end, as you say, people need a transcendent meaning to life? And oughtn't that to be a great opportunity for these useless bishops of the Church of England, if only they were to evangelize their faith a little?
Yes, I mean, one argument against interpreting wokery as an alternative to organized religion and as filling that God-shaped hole is, well, if that's the case, why has the Church of England embraced wokery? Surely, the bishops in the Church of England, they don't have a God-shaped hole at the center of their existence. So why do they need to embrace the woke cult? But I think the explanation is twofold. First of all, I think in many cases they do have a God-shaped hole because they don't actually really believe in God. They've certainly rejected Orthodox Christianity long ago. And the second explanation, I think, is that they sort of feel this compulsion to try and make Anglicanism relevant. They're obsessed with making it relevant, filling the churches by somehow saying things that are going to resonate with people who might not otherwise go to church. And I think they see in the woke cult an opportunity to make Anglicanism relevant again. I mean, you see a bit of that in Catholicism, but it doesn't seem to be quite as abject or pathetic as the obeisance with which, the leaders of the Anglican Church just seem to worship at the altar of this new cult.
Well, there are more Anglicans at church every Sunday in Nigeria than in the Anglican churches of England, Canada, and the United States combined. So those guys are not going woke, and they seem to be filling their pews rather more than the Church of England seems to do. It's a very interesting topic, and we're going to come back to it because, as Toby said, every society needs a transcendent meaning, or it's not going to survive. Thank you very much, Toby. Let us stump it out with a few of your stumps. Paul says, do you think if the power industry and water industry was nationalised, that energy bills would actually be lower? Well, as Nigel was saying earlier, it's too late for complicated plans like that, where what they're going to do is, as Nigel calls it, helicopter money. There'll be a hose pipe ban, but they'll be hosing money across the land in a couple of months' time. Susan says, do you think all this fuel price hike is all part of the World Economic Forum agenda and the nutter who runs it? You mustn't call Klaus Schwab a nutter, Susan. He knows where you live and he'll get you for it. But I think you're actually right here. They want us to live, and again, it's connected with the climate change. They want us to live poorer, meaner lives. They want us to live in smaller homes, with less electricity and less heat and less water pressure in your shower head. And they want a reduced level of private car ownership so that it's something closer to private jets. The elite have them, and everyone else is down on the corner of the road waiting for the number 27 bus. So, this is the world they want. They talk about this stuff. Jane Goodall, respected, I think she's a dame, isn't she? Dame Jane Goodall. They gave her a damehood for saying stuff like this. Thinks we need to go back to a world in which there are only 500 million people. Now, if certain people were to say things like that, like me, they'd say, oh, he's a madman, he's going to kill us all. But if Jane Goodall says it, they give her a damehood. Alan says, I'd like to ask Mark if he thinks that in the light of the decision in Denmark to ban healthy under 18s from having the COVID jabs, the UK government ought to follow suit, or at least to open a transparent debate about this policy. Would he like to moderate such a debate? Yes, I would. There's no business. There's no good reason for an under 18-year-old, actually probably more like an under 25, under 30, under 38, under 47, under 63, then you get in. But there's certainly no reason for under 18 years old who are perfectly healthy to get this shot. And the Danish government, and this is where the sterile groupthink media is really doing a disservice. You know, the Danish government is not some crazy country. It's not portrayed like Viktor Orban in Hungary or Donald Trump in America. The Danish government doesn't get more benign, more social democratic, more progressive than that. The Danes won't give it to under 18-year-olds. Okay, that's going to do it. Dan Wootton is here to thump your Thursday like nobody's business. What you got, Dan?
Mark Steyn, great show as always. Well, look, I've been trending on that cesspit Twitter all day because I called out the diver Tom Daley. Mark, are you aware of his work, the woke knitting diver?
Yeah.
And it's essentially because he did an hour of primetime propaganda on the BBC about homophobia in the Commonwealth and came to this extraordinary conclusion, Mark, that all of the homophobia in the Commonwealth today is all the fault of Britain. Britain, which legalised gay sex back in 1967. And you know what? He says he feels ashamed to be British now. So we're going to be debating that with a great superstar panel tonight, Mark.
Yeah, and you're quite right. I mean, all those African leaders. Actually, the only thing Robert Mugabe ever said that made me laugh was when he called Tony Blair the gay gangster leading the gay government of the gay United Gay Kingdom. It's funnier when Mugabe says it because he had brilliant comic timing. Anyway, Dad's going to get into all that right after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. We still have the Met Office extreme heat warning in place, in fact, until the end of Sunday, with temperatures significantly above average for a number of days and nights. High pressure is the reason why it's so dry, hot and sunny at the moment. There is that extreme heat warning covering large parts of England and East Wales, but it's going to be hot everywhere. The main exception will be northern Scotland, where we've still got a weather front bringing cloud and some outbreaks of rain. That'll continue on and off overnight. We'll see some mist and low cloud returning to parts of eastern England, but otherwise it's dry, it's clear. Some rural spots could dip down to single figures, but certainly in towns and cities and buildings, retaining the heat, it will be a difficult night for sleeping. On to a hot and sunny day on Friday. May start a bit misty across parts of the east, and there will be some low cloud, at times just flirting with some of the North Sea coasts. We'll keep a lot of cloud in northern Scotland, but it should be a brighter, warmer day across the Highlands and the Western Isles. We could get into the 20s here. Elsewhere, we're widely into the mid to high 20s, low to mid 30s across the south. 36 is possible in some places on Friday afternoon. So a hot Friday evening. Again, overnight, we'll see that mist and low cloud just drifting a bit further inland across eastern Scotland, northeast England. So it won't be as hot here on Friday or on Saturday, where that low cloud could persist. But generally, it's another hot and sunny day on Saturday. Still a bit more cloud in the far north with a little bit of light rain and drizzle. But otherwise, we'll be watching those numbers on the up once more. And again, across parts of the south, southwest Midlands into Wiltshire, down towards Dorset there, 34, 35, possibly 36 Celsius, and maybe something similar in the capital. So it's a hot weekend. The sunshine will continue for most on Sunday, but a change as this low pressure drifts northwards. We will see more cloud on Sunday. It could bring some showers next week.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m.